So if you would find a seat and we will get started here this morning. My name is Michael Held. I will be the moderator today. These coffees with the legislature are organized by the Governmental Affairs Committee of the Huron Chamber and Visitors Bureau. Refreshments are provided by AARP of South Dakota and the South Dakota Farmers Union. Thank you for coming. I would ask you to check your cell phones and put them on vibrate or turn them off so that we don't interrupt our proceedings this morning. We are glad to have with us our three legislators, Senator David Wheeler, Representative Roger Chase, and Representative Lynn Snyder. I want to recognize the media, the Huron Plainsman, Mr. Ben Chase, seated over here. Thanks for coming. Also recognize Performance Radio. You can view this on the Huron South Dakota YouTube channel. It will be played there. Also want to recognize the Governmental Affairs Committee and Lori Shelton, our president. If you would just raise your hands. Lori will be our timekeeper this morning. We will do 3 minutes for an opening statement, and then we will take your questions. If you want to ask a question, come to the podium. State your name and where you live, and you can direct your question specifically to a legislator, or you can just ask a general question, and we will let them respond in voluntary order. I would remind you, and I'll remind you again, we are here to hear from the legislators. We do not expect or accept speeches. You can make a couple of comments and then ask a question, but we are here to listen to the legislators. So, we're ready for the opening statement, and we will begin with Senator David Wheeler. Senator?
Thank you. Good morning, everybody. Thanks again for coming out and joining with us to talk about the legislative activities going on. As most of you, if you're coming to this event, I'm probably sure you know we had crossover day this week. Because that's a pretty big event in our legislative calendar. That's when bills have to be out of the first house, and so it kind of creates movement. People got to get their bills out of committee, got to get them across the floor, and so things are getting voted on and discussed. But I don't know who the House had to pay off, but somehow they were done before we were on crossover day. And I think that might be the first time in legislative history that the House had a shorter calendar at crossover day than the Senate did, because it's the House, and usually crossover day had long calendars. Traditionally, they've had long calendars, but this year they haven't. We have been moving steadily throughout the session, dealing with bills steadily throughout the session in committee and on the floor, and that results in better lawmaking because now we're not having sessions at 7, 8, 9, 10 o'clock at night where people are debating and voting on bills after 8, 9 hours straight on the floor. And so I think it's a good sign that legislators are taking their time to deal with bills methodically through the session. I think we're having good debates, but we're getting our business done well. So it's going to annoy me for a while, though the House got out before we did on the Senate side. But the big bill on the Senate side this week, I'm sure we'll probably get some questions, was the Pipeline Bill 201 on the Senate side. What I'll do is I'll hold off and wait because I'm sure there'll be some questions about it because it's a hot topic. And I'll wait for you to ask those questions, but just so everybody knows in advance, I did vote for it and I can definitely answer questions about it as best I'm able to. But with that, I'll throw it over to my House colleagues.
Thank you, Senator. Next, we will go to Representative Roger Chase.
Thank you, Mike, and thanks for all your years in doing this. This is my 22nd and final coffee with the legislators. So great to be with you this morning and look forward to the discussion as we have it. Senator Wheeler, the House is under new management, and we're taking the lead on that. We were done before you on crossover day, something we took honor on. We had 3 bills on crossover day. Usually in crossover days, we have anywhere from 20 to 35 bills. And this year we managed it to get it down to where we only had 3 bills on crossover day. We were down at 250. So we walked over and watched the Senate, and it's kind of a boring exposition, to be honest. But the decorum is a little bit better in the House. Appreciate the moderator today dressing up to the standards of the House. So we've had a really good run in the legislature over the last 6-7 weeks, and particularly for the Huron area. If you didn't catch the news, House Bill 1065, which is the shed for the South Dakota State Fairgrounds, was funded and approved by the Joint Committee on Appropriations yesterday. And that looks like it's coming to fruition. We just got to get it through the vote on both the Senate and the House, and we'll get that project done. Folks, that solidifies the state fair in here. And I get a little emotional about it because for so many years, there was controversy with the state fair and problems with the state fair. And this community stepped up, the state stepped up, the state fair will be in here. Period. So, we move forward. Obviously, we've got some very important bills. We've got the budget to finish up on here in the next 2 weeks. We're excited about where we're at. I'm a roommate with the Speaker of the House, and we made a comment this year. We have 38 legislative days. Wouldn't it be nice to be done with pretty much all of the activity within the first 28? Folks, crossover day was 28, and we were pretty much done with everything that we needed to get done, other than the bills coming over from the Senate. We are so far ahead of schedule, and it's exciting to see. What's happened this year is that the committees really got to work early. We're on task, and the committees did their job. Nearly half of the bills that were filed either came out of committee, half of them came out of committee, the other half were killed in committee, and that's unusual. The committees really did their job this year, and so we're moving ahead, and that's why we're ahead of schedule. So, great legislation's happening out there right now. Look forward to your questions.
Thank you, Representative Chase and Representative Lynn Schneider.
Well, thank you, Mike, and I too echo thanks for all your service here and hosting these legislative coffees. Appreciate the turnout this morning. As both Senator Wheeler and and Representative Chase have already commented on, I echo all those comments. You know, the nature between the two chambers, sometimes people refer to the Senate as the upper chamber. We like to refer to it as the other chamber. But there are 70 House members and 35 Senate members. So partly the nature of it is there would be more discussion and whatnot going on in the House. But with the leadership that's in place, that makes a ton of difference and the chairs of the committees of how smooth things can operate. So it's really been a great testimony to see that efficiency at work this year, because really, we really do have a lot to get done in just our 35 to 40 days that we do, but we always manage to do it. Biggest thing of all, of course, is getting that budget put together, and we just get it done. I too am really excited that the fair shed and all that has worked out as well as it has this year, and the last couple of years when we needed to get the decks accomplished. That's a huge turning the page for a new chapter in the life of the South Dakota State Fair. I will just say one more thing. We haven't always had a governor friendly to the fair, the Department of Ag and so forth, like we have had now. That's been a huge help in paving the way to do what needs to be done to keep this fair really viable and really be the showplace. So that's pretty exciting. Like Mr. Chase, or Representative Chase, this is my final legislative coffee too. I think I've probably for some of your new faces here today weren't aware, but I will finish up 2 terms this year now, 4 years, which is half of what a term limit could be, but I'm thinking that's sufficient service for me And so I won't be running for another term next year, but look forward to the good candidates that are out there. And I think District 22 will be served really well. So thank you.
Thank you to all three of you for those remarks. We are now ready for questions. You can provide questions in two manners. One, you can come to the podium and state your name and where you live, and then make a comment or two and ask a question. Or if you'd rather write your questions down, Mr. Tom Hanson has some cards and a pen, and you can write your question down, and we'll take your question that way. Who would like to ask the first question this morning? Looks like Mr. Harrington. Come on forward.
Good morning, Gary Harrington, the Mayor of Huron. I'm just here to make a quick statement to our legislators. We appreciate, as a city commission, all you do for us. Your response to our questions are greatly needed. We can then move on to the problems that we're trying to solve. We certainly appreciate, Roger, your 8 years. We've always enjoyed working with you, and Lynn, appreciate stepping up and doing what you did for the last 4 years. So that's just a quick statement from me.
Thank you. Who would, yes, sir, come on forward.
Brian Hines here in South Dakota. You guys as legislatures, of course, make the laws. I assume you also want to ensure that the laws that are in the books and that you make are followed. So what my question deals with is House Bill 1162, which was the school board election issue. And as my understanding is Representative Chase, Representative Snyder, you both voted against it. It's now over in the Senate. And my understanding is the reason you guys voted against it is because you want local control. So my question is why do you believe that local control is more important than following the law? And the law that I'm referring to has to do with absentee voting, so that like military members, snowbirds, and others can do have the required 46 days of absentee voting. And the laws that I'm talking about being violated are SDCL 13.7.14 and SDCL 12.19 1.2. Thank you.
Thank you. Who would like to take that first? Go ahead, Roger.
I can talk to it a little bit. There is a difference in the timeline on absentee voting for a school board or municipal election as compared to a statewide primary or a general election. And I took your comments back, and by the time I got back, it was a little bit too late to do anything with it this year. It is still a bill that's actively involved, or could be taken up in the Senate to be amended and come back. But when you're talking about, we're gonna have a school board and a city election here, these laws wouldn't kick in until after July 1 of this year anyway. So it's something to probably be prepared for and look forward to in years to come, but it didn't have any impact on this particular year's election. But I understand where you're coming from. Oh, I didn't have my mic on.
Well, thank you. I don't know that I'd have much more to add. You know, we always sooner or later get back into the electoral question, you know, and I don't mean to be flippant, but many times we all believe in local control until we don't. So it kind of depends on the issue. But it just seemed to me, for the most part, that was an easy one to be left up to the local decision. And if there is a conflict with the law, then we need to go back and see what it takes to get those in sync with each other.
I think the question ended up being about the absentee balloting rules. And the law does say 14 days for school and municipal elections. I don't know that in the current legislature you're going to see that changed at this point. I don't think there's a lot of appetite for changing that particular one, because the federal law requires us to have the 45 days for federal elections. That's why there's difference. And so I don't know if there was a bit of bill this year on the absentee ballot deadlines.
But SDCL 13.7.14 directly deals with absentee voting in the school election, and that says you're supposed to follow 12.19 1.2 that requires, doesn't say you can, it requires for no more, no less than 46 days absentee voting, so that 14 days you're talking about is not absentee voting. That might be voting in the business manager's office, but that doesn't mean the 46 days. It's required by 1219 1.2.
Thank you. I think we have your point. Any further comments? Otherwise, we're gonna go on.
Just following the bill, tracking the bill, it went through both chambers. I'm not seeing that it had any no votes. Signed by the governor February 8th. So enough legislators must have felt pretty confident in the bill that we voted for it and supported it, so. Sorry, Brian.
Go ahead and go to the Senate yet.
Oh, I'm sorry, 11. Go ahead, talk on it.
Well, so the 1162 was about the date of election. And that's gonna be in Senate State Affairs next week. Hasn't been scheduled yet, but I'm sure it's gonna be up on Wednesday. And I have, having been on the school board for several years, I definitely do prefer local control on these things. I've stated publicly, I think even in some of these forums, I've said that I have been concerned about, statewide, school, district, local, even municipal elections are often single-digit turnout elections, and that's not good. And so the people that want to move, the proponents of moving school and municipal elections to primary elections or general elections have a good argument, because you get a lot more turnout, a lot more public participation in those elections. But there was a bill about 2 years ago doing a lot of the same thing. I voted against that one then. I don't know that I'm changing on this particular one, especially since it allows school district elections in the general election in November, which would not make a lot of sense given how the school calendar runs on a school calendar from July to July instead of January to January. But I want to encourage everybody that we need more participation in school district elections and municipal elections. Because eventually, I think this is gonna pass at some point. A lot of people don't like the fact that you get single-digit turnouts, and those are winning elections in the school, on the local levels. And so they wanna restrict that, move it to, dates that might have larger turnout. So, if you wanna prevent that, you gotta get out there and vote, and you gotta get your friends to vote in those municipal and local elections.
Okay, we're ready for the next question. Yes, sir, please come to the podium.
Can I stand right here, just sorry, so others can hear me, or?
There's a microphone on
Oh,
the
okay,
ceiling
great.
here.
Good morning, my name is Ron Frankenstein, I'm a corn producer from Spring County, and I'm here to support Senate Bill 201. About 60 of us corn growers and ethanol people who are out here Wednesday. Appreciate Senator Wheeler carrying the water for us, and now it goes to the House. Us South Dakotans aren't that necessarily that big on climate change, but I think we're coming to recognize there is climate change. Who's to blame for it is another issue, but the deciders in Washington have decided that carbon dioxide is one of the issues. And in order for us to remain profitable as ethanol producers, we're gonna have to sequester some of this carbon and bury it. And otherwise, our ethanol will not be the product that the marketplace demands. Everything is about carbon intensity, and I would guess pretty soon the pencil you buy at the drugstore is gonna have a carbon intensity score on the damn thing. So it's kind of ridiculous. But anyway, we need the support in the House now to pass Senate Bill 201. And hopefully, there won't be a number of onerous amendments there that make it impossible for Summit Carbon Solutions to build a pipeline to North Dakota. We just need that pipeline so we can sequester our carbon dioxide and lower the CI, carbon intensity score, so we can sell our ethanol into all the markets.
Okay, we'll let the legislators respond, Ron, thank
Thank you.
you. David, you want to start?
Well, yeah, I already voted for it. It is I go back to something I said a forums ago, is that when I'm looking at these laws, I'm not necessarily saying I'm for or against a pipeline. I'm not trying to say that this one has to pass, this one doesn't. I try not to pick, like, which project I think is right and wrong. That's not what I think a legislator is supposed to do. I'm supposed to look at the law and make sure we have a good framework for businesses and to go out and do what they do. In this case, I think that we needed to have 201 to provide some regulatory certainty that didn't exist in the law currently, that was hampering this particular project. I just happen to agree with the fact that it is very important for our ethanol industry and our corn farmers. And so I do think that it is ultimately going to be very beneficial for the state if it happens. And so I'm happy to be voting on the side of helping that to get through the process. But it's, I want people to know that that's like it. My vote isn't for or against a pipeline. It's about the regulations that we set. Because the regulations won't just affect this particular one. They're going to affect someone else may want to do one somewhere else. There was 2 pipelines to start when this all started a year or 2 ago, 2 years ago when they started up. And another one can start up, next year. We don't know exactly what our regulations will do in the future. So I want to always make sure that what I'm voting on, I think is a good process for not only this process, but the next one to come that we don't know about yet. And so that's why I think 201 was a good way of providing regulatory certainty, so that way this project can proceed and future projects can proceed knowing what the rules are.
Representative Schneider, it's coming to House Commerce for next week. Why don't we let you go next?
Yeah, next stop is my House Commerce Energy Committee. And maybe just kind of back up a little bit. Last Monday was a holiday, but the 2 prior Mondays before that, our House Commerce Energy had a total of 9 or 10 pipeline-related bills that we worked on and disposed of one way or another. A couple of them were passed, a couple of them, most of them actually were not. Some of them tried to really nail down eminent domain, that it could not be used in an instance of a copper pipeline like this proposal. And so part of all that process, just through those 2 committees, we normally have a 2-hour committee. And not all committees get everything done in those 2 hours, and so we had several other times. One was later in the day, and one was on another day, the other week. And so to get through those 10 bills, it was almost 7 hours of testimony and stuff that we listened to, and lots of materials, handouts that proponents and opponents had given us. And so we processed all that the best we could. And my votes, I feel, were fairly consistent there. I didn't want to see eminent domain thrown out, because when you try to look at the bigger picture and kind of its overarching effects, whether it's utility companies or all other kinds of pipelines and even transmission lines, all those things have a lot of potential to come into play. So trying to be as fair and reasonable as you can so that we can try to protect a favorable business climate in South Dakota, that's what I had tried to guide my decisions. Well, a couple of those bills, 1185 and 1186, maybe they'll get talked about a little bit later, put in some specific enhancements in terms of protecting. Lori's holding up a 1 minute. This might take 10 minutes, but we'll see if I can boil it down a little better. But those 2 bills started building in some additional protections for landowners, and even maybe provided a one way to let the landowner, if the pipeline's going to go on their land, to receive a little more of that revenue stream. For example, $1 a linear foot of pipeline that goes through your land is what that one bill would make the company pay to the landowner every year for the life of the pipeline. And so a couple other things like that. Well, now we have Senate Bill 201 coming here, and I was able to hear the Senate Commerce Energy testimony on it. I actually sat in about the last 45 minutes. And then when it was on the floor, because as you heard, the House was so efficient on crossover day, we had plenty of time to go over to the Senate and listen to all the testimony on 201 until they disposed of it. So, but I think Monday, when we are scheduled to hear it in our committee, there will likely be another room packed full of people. There will be lots of testimony and proponent and opponent again. Some of it will probably be similar things that we've heard before. Some of it will probably be new information. But for, I think, the individuals that have the biggest heartburn about 201, there's a section 7 in there that tries to address how much control an individual county can have regarding establishing their own setbacks and things like that, maybe among some other things. And that section 7 essentially would probably pretty well preclude that. And that's based on a federal judge's ruling on a county in Iowa, Story County, I believe it is, and that did not rule in favor of the counties. Well, the other side argues that, well, that's not totally finally settled law, it might get appealed, you know, all that kind of stuff. And but it was a pretty firm ruling. So there is one thought about there might be an amendment to try to rework section 7 or replace it with something else. But in so many cases, these matters that have such a strong feeling or emotion or passion on each side, you know, I want my landowner rights protected. If I don't want a pipeline on my land, they should figure out how to go around and do something else with the pipeline. I might not necessarily be against it, just don't bring it to me. Then there's the concerns about, is it really safe, is it not? And I've seen lots of material, both sides on that. And so some of that stuff comes down to just which set of facts are you gonna believe? So when this gets all done, however it turns out, we're not likely gonna be one big happy family in this state on that matter. It's just people are where they are on it. I just hope that as we go through the rest of this, that we can at least keep the debate, the discussion as civil and respectful and orderly as possible. Our job is try to listen as carefully as we can and ask the best questions that we can. And then when it's time to decision, we have to vote yes or no. We don't have an option to say, well, passing, or I'm not gonna vote. So when it comes time to vote, I've always voted. So far, I've been casting votes that, not because of this pipeline company per se, but in favor of legislation that would help enable projects like this to proceed, because I believe it serves the better interest of our whole state. I mean, of which corn farming and ethanol is a huge part of it. And not to get too deep into that, but if you follow that in recent times, we've gotten so good at producing corn with genetics and everything else, bugs control, all that stuff, that we haven't figured out how to use all of it. And if we just can't get on top of that soon enough, there are those that are certain of it's a pretty big risk of whether we can still have much of a future in that because of corn production that happens in other parts of the world. So that's probably enough.
Thank you. Roger?
Thank you, Mike, and thank you, Ron, for the question. This past Monday, the three of us were in Redfield, and we faced a pretty contentious crowd. And Ron, I'm sure you probably realized you have 3 legislators here that are pro-ethanol. The crowd that we had in Redfield was opposite. They are anti-pipeline. And if you hear anti-pipeline, I'm sorry, you'll be heard, but you're gonna hear us out as well. These 3 bills, 1185, 1186, and 201, basically are bills that we feel will get to some sort of compromise on this particular subject. And Representative Schneider made comments that basically we need to create the legislation that the PUC can follow. when it comes to, permitting this particular project. With these three bills as they're drafted, if we can get those through, gives them a pretty clear roadmap of what their direction is and how they will go on this particular project. We have an opportunity in South Dakota right now to get this project done and move to the next stage of ethanol. And I look at all the communities across the state of South Dakota that have an ethanol plant. There's 16 of them now, there's a 17th, there's a Gevo and Lake Preston would be the 17th one. They're in small towns, folks. They employ 35 to 55 people. And I think I can list most of them off. Wentworth, Marion, Rosholt, Groton, Oneida, Redfield, Loomis, Aurora, Huron, Watertown, Aberdeen, Minot. What am I missing? Scotland. Hudson. They're all in small towns, guys. Take Huron, Aberdeen, and Watertown out of the mix. Brookings is right next to Aurora. Think of the loss of 35 to 50 jobs in those small towns. What that would do to those communities. Lake Preston's the other one that could potentially have Gevo. This is an opportunity that we can't lose. This is a long-term benefit for the state of South Dakota. We got to get this done. We got to get this done this particular legislative session. We had argumentative people that said, wait a year. Wait for PHMSA to come back with new regulations. That's a federal agency. It could be 10 years before they come up with updates. We can't wait that long. We need to move forward. We need to get this done and get it done now. It's too important. So as we move forward, we got 2 weeks. We're counting on the House Commerce to get 201 done. We're counting on the Senate to get 1185, 1186 done. If we can get that done, I feel very good about the future of ethanol, and more importantly, the future of South Dakota.
Thank you. We will take another, okay, thanks, Ron. Yes, Mr. White,
One clarification.
come on to the podium, please. Hard to direct an ex-senator like that, but everybody follows the rules.
I see them all three ducking, but just one clarification. Of all the corn that's produced in South Dakota, what percentage of that corn goes to ethanol?
50 to 60%. They say 2 out of every 3 rows of corn goes to ethanol. It's right in that figure. So that's another point to bring up. I appreciate the question. Last year at this time, corn was $6 a bushel. Farmers, correct me if I'm wrong, $6 a bushel. Yesterday, $3.68. Over $2 a bushel less. Ethanol production is still good. We have a glut of corn, and the market is suffering. That has a major impact on our economies across the state and the communities that I just talked about. If we lose ethanol, can you imagine what that would do to the South Dakota state economy? As legislators, we have to address that budget each and every year. Can you imagine if we continue to lose that value of that corn? It would be devastating to the state of South Dakota. Now, on the other hand, if we can get this project done and they get a greater return on that corn and that ethanol and that margin in between, it's a great opportunity for the state of South Dakota. But the loss of the ethanol markets in the state of South Dakota would be devastating to the state. So we have become reliant on the ethanol plants as our market. But more importantly, in the ethanol plants, when they run that corn through, we take a raw grain commodity, we come out with ethanol or alcohol to mix with gasoline to make ethanol. More importantly, our farm uses all of the distiller's grains. I can't imagine not having the wet distiller's grain to feed the livestock. It's a very vital and important part of our farming operation. And it's value added to the corn. It's an important thing that we need to look at and keep going and keep moving in South Dakota.
I just want to, just a little bit on that, is to not lose sight of the impact that the Gevo plant by Lake Preston could have. That's projected to be $1 billion investment, the largest project from the Governor's Office of Economic Development in history in South Dakota. Will be coming into Kingsbury County next door to us. Huge investment on sustainable, it's for sustainable aviation fuel, which is where you can, basically is, using corn to make jet fuel. Is basically what it ends up being, and it's an area where a lot of places want this type of fuel, and this would be a major investment for South Dakota that we could lose if this project doesn't go through.
Yes, sir.
Thank you. Doug Kasmerzak, Kingsbury County, farmer, corn producer, member of a shareholder in Glacial Lakes Energy ethanol plant in Watertown, and very close, excited person in Kingsbury County for our expected GEVO plant to come in. And I sense that, gentlemen, you have a very good grasp, and I appreciate that very much. I guess, to me, just to touch on a couple of small things, I also serve as a county commissioner in Kingsbury County. And boy, if there were ever a time when we could use another revenue source, this offers a great opportunity. It's just like, it's waiting for us to accomplish this and really bring some good back to our county governments and supply, particularly in infrastructure that we all deserve. We just simply deserve it. It's there, we deserve it. Why not? The other thing that I just want to really briefly touch on, and once again, I really appreciate your understanding of this project, representatives and elected officials here. That's very encouraging. The safety issue, I believe, is maybe the obstacle, but surely attainable in education and definition of what this pipeline is, what it's carrying. For one thing, I have lifted a 1 foot length of this pipeline. I'm telling you, it takes 2 hands to raise it. It's heavy, it's thick, it's safe. The other thing, it's deep, right? It's very deep underground. The chances of harming that pipeline are very slim. Not to say that it can't happen, you never say never. But I know an awful lot of pipelines that are a whole lot less depth than that and more dangerous. This is a non-explosive material, remember that. It's non-explosive. It's quickly dissipated up into the air, if that anything should happen, which I am confident that it won't. But if it did, I would much rather be concerned about a propane leak or a natural gas leak than this explosive, non-explosive material, excuse me. So my question,
Finish up, please.
yes, my question would be, as you leaders of your caucuses sit here today, will you be responsible and take on the role of convincing your fellow caucus members the importance of this? Thank you.
Thank you. Go ahead, Representative Schneider.
Yeah, thank you. Thanks for the question. The short answer is, yeah, we, that's part of our process there's paid lobbyists out there, and then there are we, the representatives, and after we have our own self-convinced on a position, we've got an opportunity to, if you want to call it lobby, our fellow comrades in the House or in the Senate, and help them see our point, see if there's some questions they've got that we overlooked, that we can go back and make sure that we are straight on. So yeah, that really is part of the process. I was just gonna maybe try to add one more thing, as Doug, you brought up several points. As I think about this whole process that's been going through the legislature, mostly in the last 3 weeks with these different pipeline bills, I think one of the really good benefits of putting all this in front of the legislature is, yes, we are responsible for making the legislation, and hopefully we do good legislation. But certainly it's helped me, and I hope all the legislature members learn a whole lot more and dig into this deeper, so that we can wind up with the best legislation that makes a particular project like this pipeline as responsible and as safe and as functional as possible. I was just gonna throw one example in the area of, it's deep. The PHMSA regulations we keep hearing about require a minimum of 3-foot burial. Well, this pipeline is, and I guess legislation that's all in there would be requiring it, is that they've agreed and volunteered that they will be 4 feet deep. And when you run into tile and different things like that, drainage that farmers have put in their fields, that they will make sure that they've protected all that, or if they disturbed it, that they repair all that type of thing. So hopefully our legislation that we finally end up with is gonna ensure all those kind of things, not just a bunch of promises. And I'm confident that we're doing a good job of achieving that goal.
Go ahead, Roger.
Thank you. Thanks, Doug. Palms up, full disclosure. That's my easement contract with Summit. I thought there might be opponents here that wanted to question me about the easement and what it contains. I read it last night, I know what's in there. But going back to the comments on taxation and what it brings for revenue to counties, and I'm glad I've got a Beetle County Commissioner here. This is numbers before 201 and 1186 would go into account. Annual taxation, $1,032,000. $790,000 of it going to schools. The 3 schools that would benefit from it, here in the school district, $294,000. Iroquois School District, $215,000. Willow Lake, $281,000. Money to townships, and $189,000 for the county itself at its discretion to spend how it wants to do it. That's ongoing revenue every year. And with the addition of these 2 bills, with the lineal taxation, there'll be more. As a representative, how could I vote against this particular plan and go back and face the counties that I represent? I was the county chair, I was the chair of the summer study on county funding. Most every county is in need of financial assistance. A $1 million injection every year for simply having this pipeline go through it? How could I look at the superintendent from Huron, or Willow Lake, or Iroquois, and say I can't be for it? This is a great opportunity, again, not only with the ethanol production, but for taxation and what it offers for the communities and the counties and schools across South Dakota.
Anything further, David? Okay, we're ready for another question. Yes, sir. Nice
Morning.
jackrabbit shirt on there. Good morning.
Morning, Gary Kaufman, Lake Byron, Huron. My question's for the distinguished representatives. It's dealing with Senate Bill 203, which is the enhanced concealed carry permit at schools. Everybody in this room, of course, is really concerned about school safety for students, staff, anybody who's in the school environment. The question is this bill in its current form, in your opinion, good public policy? Because as somebody who's been involved directly in education for 50 years, I would submit that there are issues with the way it's written right now. So I'd like to hear from you folks. Thank you.
Thank you. Directed,
Go to the center.
I'll just start, because I
Okay.
voted on it already while they look it up.
I know what it is.
Okay, so 203 was a bill that would allow an individual who has an enhanced concealed carry permit and permission from the principal of the school, or whoever's in charge of the building, to carry in the school. I usually have I'm always wary of any of these bills, expanding what we're doing in these areas. Having more guns in schools, generally, I don't think is a great idea. But in terms of what the law is, and what is reasonable, and what people will agree with. I think this was not a terrible way to go. It's actually quite a Minnesota statute. Minnesota allows this, and generally you don't think of Minnesota as a really pro-gun state. And so when I was reading through it, an enhanced concealed carry permit requires, a fingerprinted background check, requires gun safety courses you have to take, and then to be licensed by a sheriff. And then what really got me on board was the requirement that the school still has to sign off on it. You have to talk to the principal, they have to agree. And so schools still have a check on that process. They don't want to allow it, they don't have to. There's no requirement that they do. And so the way I see this is in some of those communities that are comfortable with it, they want to allow it, it's going to be their choice. So to me, it's like a local control option for how to handle this issue.
Go ahead.
I really kind of got caught up on it today when you gave me the bill, so I read through it before we were going today. It goes before House Judiciary on Monday. I'm going to kind of listen to and see what their discussion is. It's unfortunately it's going to be the same time as 201, so I'm going to go listen to 201, but I'll listen in on the testimony prior to me voting on it on Tuesday.
Any comments, Lynn?
I don't think I've got much of anything to add there. I was just looking at how this moved through the Senate. Their Judiciary Committee passed it unanimously, and the Senate had 31 yes and 3 no's, so it was pretty strong coming through the Senate. So we'll see what the House does with it.
Okay, we would have time for one more question. Yes, ma'am, come forward, please.
I'm Dolores Brown, and I would like to know how each of you voted on letting NOM spend our emergency tax dollars to send troops to the southern border. It didn't do any good the first time, and she talked again, the federal government should be addressing this, and they had a good bipartisan plan that gave money for more border security, more border personnel, more detention facilities, and more, I can't remember now what the other, but it has allowed a lot of things that would have helped. But no one spoke out against that and wants to send our troops with our emergency tax dollars to the southern border, which didn't do any good before. She spoke out against that national bipartisan bill. I just want to know how each of you voted as to whether she should be able to spend our emergency tax dollars to do it.
Thank you, ma'am.
We've had discussions in our caucuses over the last week about this particular issue since the governor announced that she was sending troops to the border. Obviously, we as a legislature want to know how many, how long, what it's going to cost, and more importantly, what they're going to be doing. And from our understanding, and correct me, Senator, if it's different on your caucus, but our caucus is of the understanding from the governor's office that we will send 20 National Guard individuals at 3 different times for 30 days. Their responsibilities will be to build and erect storage containers with razor wire. And that's basically their duties, is to build and construct that wall to help cut down on the number of people entering illegally. And so I am okay with that. Our caucus was under the understanding or the feeling that we need to have oversight of what's going on there. Any changes from what we agreed on needs to be under the auspices of the executive board, which is basically a group that is elected by legislators to make decisions during the year. It's not during the legislative session. So as of right now, we have a mess at the southern border. And I think that this is an issue that all 50 states should set up and be part of. And I think hopefully South Dakota is that example that other states will follow.
Go ahead, Lynn.
Just to add, I think I heard your question specifically, how did we vote? There has not been a vote at this point. The discussions that Representative Chase talked about that we've had in our caucus, we recognize that the governor, is the commander-in-chief of our National Guard, and controls them. And the only thing that supersedes that is if the President of the United States decides to call the Guard from South Dakota for some national, international situation and so forth. So, but we are very interested in trying to find ways that we can have more oversight in knowing how that money's gonna get spent, and specifically what the Guard's gonna be doing each time this governor calls them out.
No, I think they handle it correctly. I mean, there's not been a vote on the issue. I don't anticipate there will be a vote on the issue because it's something within the governor's authority to do. And the only thing really we're going to vote on is to be the general appropriations bill at some point. And I'm not going to vote against the general appropriations bill because of that issue. I think all of us agree that our southern border is a problem. And the current federal administration is not fixing it. And so there's a lot of support for doing something down there. And I agree with what my House colleague said, is that our position as a legislature is to provide oversight and some transparency so people know what's going on. But there's not a lot of there's not much appetite in the legislature to stop it and to say that no, you cannot use our troops in that way. A lot of it because we can't necessarily. We're not the commander in chief. She is, and so she gets to direct what they do. We can only say, make sure that the funds are budgeted appropriately or not. So.
And I remembered what else that money, what else they were going to do nationally, and it was to close the border if too many people tried to come in. And President Biden is talking about doing that. I think it's a national issue that they should have let that bipartisan bill pass, but no one came out against it and Trump came out against it because Trump doesn't want good for now because he wants to be president. He thinks that will help Biden if they
Okay.
straighten out that mess.
Thank you, ma'am. Since this is the last session for our two representatives, I'm going to take a moderator's privilege here and ask a question that came in from the audience for Representative Chase and Representative Schneider. What was your greatest accomplishment in the years in the House? And also, what was your biggest surprise, something you didn't expect? And which one of you two would like to respond first?
I think that it might go together. And thanks for the question for whoever sent it in. I would have to go back 3 years ago, 2021, when the executive board came to me and said, we want you to chair a summer study on workforce housing across South Dakota. And they picked me because of a real estate background, and I had 5 years of experience in the legislature, and they thought that I might have a little knowledge on the subject. So I was able to pick my committee. Guess who I picked? Of the 14 members of the committee, 3 were from District 22. We met 4 times. They were freshman legislators, a rookie, young senator, and a rookie legislator. I took a lot of chastising. Why did you pick those people as your committee? I said, I trust them, and I know they're going to work hard. And they did, and we did. And throughout our meetings, we kind of came up with this idea that infrastructure for communities was the biggest issue the communities saw. And so, as we wound up our summer study discussion, we wanted to come up with a long-term housing infrastructure program that would fund and grow and be something of value for years and years to come. And to our committee's credit, I don't know how we ever kept our numbers confidential or the lack of numbers confidential to the governor's office. We were hoping for $100 million. Now keep in mind, this was COVID time. We had extra money. We really wanted to have a long-term projected opportunity to invest in South Dakota for years to come. But we never told the governor's office the number that we were thinking. And I had to give that report to the executive board in November, and they kept asking me for the number. We haven't determined that number yet. As we get closer to the legislative session, we'll determine that number. Well, we were stalling. We knew that the governor was going to announce some money for it, but we didn't know how much, if it was 50 million, 70 million. We got called in to the governor's office the night before her budget address, and she said we're going to allocate $200 million to housing infrastructure. And I don't know how we did it, stone-faced, we said, that's pretty close to what we were thinking. And I guess to go along with that, the surprise of it is, by God, we as legislators came back that next session and we held tight. She wanted to put it all in the form of grants, and we did not want it all to go out in the form of grants, because we understood from visiting with the people, we're not gonna solve this problem overnight. It's gonna be an ongoing issue in South Dakota for years to come. If we had that revolving loan fund where we can get money out, get that money back, and continue to loan that out to communities in the future, that could be a momentous situation that we wanted to do. And we did. We got that program established. It took us 2 years to get it done. So I guess the surprise of it is we were able to get it accomplished. And I guess I go back to, that has to be my greatest accomplishment, being able to work with these two and 11 others across the state of South Dakota. They have a long-term program that'll go on for years. And I don't know about the other two representatives, but Armor, South Dakota, was there on Thursday serving lunches. As I was going through to get my sandwich and a bag of chips, Dave Lampert from Mitchell said, that's Representative Chase right there in the line. And I thought, my God, what did I do now? And it was the mayor of Armor. And he says, can I get your picture? Can I take my picture with you? I said, well, yeah, what's this all about? Armor, South Dakota was one of the first communities to be awarded one of these housing infrastructure program grants and loans. They have 37 lots that they're developing in Armor, South Dakota. He had a plat on the wall. He wanted a picture with me next to that plat. And so I got my picture taken. Armor, South Dakota was one of the first recipients. Everybody thought this was all going to go to Sioux Falls and Rapid City. Armor, South Dakota is one of the first recipients. It's a good program. We look forward to grow. Someday it'll get to $200 million from our $100 million seed stock. But that's what I think is our greatest accomplishment and surprise.
Thank you, Roger. Same question, Representative Snyder, your biggest accomplishment and your biggest surprise.
Well, first, I didn't chair a committee like that, but what Representative Chase hasn't told you, you need to be reminded of. He, as chair of that committee, worked his tail off, because we didn't get that all finished the first year. He had to come back last year and clean it up. And there were lots of legislator concerns about, you know, should we really be doing this? Should we be doing anything in grants? And even the finessing back and forth with the governor's office to land on what we did, which was an excellent product in the end. But he never gave up. He just stayed in there and had his sleeves rolled up, and so I can't thank you and compliment you enough for sticking with it and seeing it all the way through. That will have tremendous future impacts right along the way to lots of other Armors and so forth around the state. And Hurons too, not just Sioux Falls and Rapid. But anyway, well, in my case, in my 4 short years here, you know, it wasn't long after I came out there, even before I got out there, the decks burned down here in the State Fair, and you know, what a tragedy. It was like Halloween night, the end of October. And in 90 days or so, the legislature was gonna crank up and get going. And the governor immediately stepped into that and wanted to see a bigger and better beef barn building and everything replaced. there was so little time, 90-day window, to try to flesh out a $20-30 million project, and COVID's in the middle of our lap and everything else. And so we brought a bill and got that through both houses. And of course, that takes 2/3 majority when you're spending money. And we achieved that. I think it was like well over 55 yeses out of 70 in the House. So that was quite a statement. Wonderful. We're on our way. Well, now we're into the new year, and you couldn't have all your bids and everything nailed down that fast, let alone try to have all the finessing finished with the engineering and designing of the building, but we had a good framework to go with. Well, any of you that have worked in construction with steel or anything, that lumber and whatnot, that all went just sky high, and most of that building is steel. So we were short some money. Well, they worked to downsize the building a little bit, a couple things like that, but we still had to come back to the legislature and ask for more. That was hard because the good appropriators and everything as they are you sure this is all the money you're gonna need when we came there the first time? Oh, yeah, we'll get it done. So now hat in hand, and we squeaked it through for the additional money, but that was a big, heavy lift. But it really was a great accomplishment for District 22 and the South Dakota State Fair, so I'm pretty happy about that. And being optimistic here that we're gonna see this sheet barn and shed through here in the next couple of weeks too, which would be right along 3rd Street, South Side Road, right next to the Armory. That'll be an exciting project too. Surprise? I'd never thought about being in the legislature myself. I was kind of a key that urged and convinced my brother-in-law to run 4 years before I did, and then of course he reached his demise with the COVID. So then I started resting on me and saying, well, you gotta do this. So, well, okay, but I don't have any background for this kind of work. I testified a couple of times, and I was so keyed up in that first week because I like to have everything, all the ducks in a row, all the time, It's funny, I had to just take a deep breath and stop and say, you know what? You've been here a week, you now found out where all the bathrooms are, we could go on. But I guess the rest of the surprise would be that all the rest of the legislators, both chambers, there's a good collegial atmosphere there. They respect each other, they like to try to help each other. An interesting key part of that for my wife was we had to stop in the middle part of January, and her healthcare provider thought that she needed to have a closer look at her heart and everything, so got scheduled for an angiogram. And so as word got around the legislature about that, they just kept checking in and asking about it and offering to pray and just all those kinds of things. It was really cool to have that kind of a touch. And that was a pretty nice surprise too, because you don't go out expecting that. So it is a very good working relationship, even when some issues get really sharp between the two sides. At the end of the day, we can still talk to each other. We've been able to protect that relationship, which I think is really important for the functioning of the legislature. So that would be mine.
Thank you, both of you. Full disclosure, that question came from a Gloria Schneider, who's related to Representative Schneider. We have come to the end of our time frame this morning. We're going to take 2 minutes each for closing statements from our legislators. And Representative Chase, we're going to begin with you.
Thank you, Mike, and again, thanks for all of your years being here moderating to make sure that everything goes smoothly. I want to say a special thank you to pro-pipeline, pro-ethanol individuals for being here today. You guys have finally woke up. We're getting more letters in support rather than letters in opposition. Thank you for finally coming to the table and helping support us as legislators as we move forward. I want to take 1 minute to say thank you. Former Senator White, Senator Wheeler, you've been great senators to work with. Representative Schneider, and previous Bob Glanzer, great individuals to work with in the legislature. And folks, that's key. If we can work together, it benefits us in this particular district. I want to say thank you to the voters of District 22. Throughout between 2000 and 2022, I ran in 7 different elections, either in a primary or a general. 7-0. I won every one because of your confidence in me, and I appreciate that. And hopefully, I know some of you in this room did not vote for me sometimes, but I hope that I have earned your support and your vote if I was to continue on. When you get to 7-0, you say that's enough. And sometimes term limits, you eliminate the duds and the bums. So whatever I'm classified as, we'll just keep it at that. But I move on. I've been grateful to serve District 22 for these years. I'm glad to have earned your friendship. Glad to have earned the respect of the colleagues that I've worked with. And we just got to finish it up. There's 3 generations of redheads back here in the corner that I'm sure will find plenty of things for me to do in the future. And look forward to being able to spend a little bit more time with them. So thanks for everything. Looking forward to the last 2 weeks. We're going to get this done.
Thank you, Representative Chase. We'll go to Representative Lynn Schneider. Lynn?
Well, thank you. I echo all those same thank yous to you, Mike Held, to the Huron Chamber Visitors Bureau organization for sponsoring these coffees, for all of your attendance here. And I, too, am very thankful to see the front row of the pro-ethanol people here. Some of you I've known personally from before, some of you I just got to meet today for the first time. While those matters are not easy to sort out, it's part of the charge and function of the legislature, and so we try to take those responsibilities seriously. I too have, and my wife, have a number of grandchildren, 8 of them. They range from 11 years old to 23, and we're very close to those 3 families and follow them a lot, athletics and sports, and so I'm looking forward to doing more of that in the days ahead during the winter, because some of those winter sports, that's when they happen. So I don't see myself spending 2, 3, 4 months in Arizona or Florida or Texas. I'd be doing good to spend 2 or 3 weeks in that setting, but that's kind of my basic makeup there. It's been a real honor and a privilege to serve the residents and the voters of District 22 in these 4 years, these 2 terms. You know, first it was Beadle County and Kingsbury County, and then the 10-year redistricting anniversary came up, and all that had to be accomplished. And so that's how now this district is Beadle County and Spink and kind of a western sliver of Clark. And I understand many years ago, before I was really paying attention to that part of state legislature work and stuff, at one time Beadle and Spink were together, so now we're back again. But I just can't thank you enough for the honor and the privilege, and it's been a great experience to serve. Thank you.
And last but not least, Senator Wheeler.
Well, thank you. Definitely hard to follow up all of that, mainly because I'm not retiring. At least with your support. Yeah, exactly. You can retire me if you want to, I guess. It's going to be your choice. But it's been great to work with these 2 fine gentlemen over here. They are great representatives, great people to work with, always willing to talk about a bill or carry a bill for me if I need some help. And it's they're great representatives for our community. I did want to end with on a few pieces of legislation. We talked about the sheep barn a little bit, the sheep shed at the beginning, but it's not quite done. And so I want to make sure everybody knows we still need support on that. It's gotten out of the Joint Appropriations Committee. That's a great indication that it can get done. But it's still got to get 2/3 vote in each house. And so for those who have friends, family, especially in other districts, have them reach out to their representatives and senators in support of that. We still need to get the 2/3 vote in each house to get it across the finish line. So still a little work there left to be done. And I just wanted to finish up by talking about the fun bill that I've been running this year on feral cats. It's been a great bill. And I want to finish with it because it's a great story of how I had no idea this was even an issue. This was not something in my wheelhouse. This was not something I was thinking about. But a few constituents brought it to me and said, "Hey, we want to do this thing. We're running some problems with the law, and can you help us fix this issue?" And so I say, "Sure, let me look at it." And then we get together. We talk with law enforcement. We talk with all the people involved, and then I drop a bill to help them out with it. And then I found out there's issues in Sioux Falls and Vermillion. People just jumping on board with this. I had no idea this was a statewide issue. And it passed the House finally. I appreciate you guys' support on getting it past the House. And so we just got to finish it up. They amended it over there, so we got to finish it up back again on the Senate side, and I think we'll be done with that bill. But it's a great example of how constituents a few people can change the law in South Dakota by just coming to their legislator and saying, "Hey, this is the issue." And then you find out there's more people in the state who have that same question that you did. You may not even thought about it before. But it's that citizen involvement that makes South Dakota's legislature great, and we can get bills passed, big or small. So thank you for your support. If anybody does want to help support, I do have petitions still. So thank you very much. Appreciate it.
Thank you. Thank you for coming this morning and attending and being interested and your excellent questions. I do have 6 announcements, so bear with me. March 30th, 5 weeks from today, which is a Saturday morning, we will have an election forum for the Huron School Board and for the Huron Mayor contests, and we welcome you to come to that. May 11th, we will have an election forum for the candidates for the 2 House seats that will be up for election. Both of those forums will be right in this room at 9 a.m. on those days. Have a few days left in the Huron Burger Battle, so you can try the 8 different places in Huron that are participating in the Burger Battle. Number 4, Cabin Fever Games is being sponsored by the Huron Region United Way. They're starting at 3 p.m. Minnow races, beanbag toss, other fun games, silent auction at the Nordby Center, beer dunk tank, and some of our favorite people will be in the dunk tank. This is our last coffee for the 2 legislators, and you've done a nice job of recognizing them. Lastly, Huron Rising. The Community Foundation is doing an effort on planning for the future of Huron. There will be 2 forums coming up, one this Tuesday at the Campus Center and then another one on March 5th. If you want to attend, you need to register for them. You can also participate in a survey, which is on the HuronSouthDakota.com website, and you can get your input into the committee that way as to what you'd like to see Huron look like in the future. Thanks for coming. Have a great day.